Hey everybody, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you're having a good week. I've been having an interesting one as I'm going through some minor joint pain and starting physical therapy this week. That's almost as sore and annoying as the pain I had, so I'm not really sure what it's doing for me, but I'm optimistic, and my physical therapist seems to be optimistic that I'll be get back to normal range of motion after they've extracted some more cash out of me. But at any rate, so a little sore from that, but otherwise doing good. This week I originally intended to continue with my series on forming resistance with a piece on lesser forms of resistance, you might say. But I've decided that we'll get back to that next week because this week I want to focus on the trial that is going on and is front and center in our circle, rightly or wrongly, because there's actually several trials going on this week, several kind of important things going on this week. But this one seems to be the one that everybody's focused on. And I'm, of course, talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Kyle is facing charges that could put him away for life. And this trial's been playing out on live stream this week. It's been an extremely interesting and I really believe eye-opening spectacle that's been kind of turning heads all week. We've seen some interesting stuff come out of this, but I've been watching a stream on YouTube called Rakita Law, this has been a fantastic way to watch as far as I'm concerned. It's a group of defense attorneys who are watching the live stream from the case and offering their commentary, and the group changes a little bit every day, but it's generally 5 or 6 lawyers offering, their take on this and how, how the case is going and how it's kind of proceeds. Wow. I mean, where to even begin on this, because there's an awful lot to go into here. And I think I'll start by touching on just the viewpoint that you get from watching these lawyers raise their concerns and their opinions on the case. And it's been somewhat of a roller coaster ride. In a lot of ways, this is kind of armchair quarterbacking the case because they are, emphatically urging for the defense to object to something or take a certain line of questioning. And then they'll back off and say, well, we're not in the room, so we don't know the jury, we don't know how they're reacting, so on and so forth. So they're kind of given this give and take kind of approach to it. But something very clear, however, has come across, especially as I was watching this today, which is Friday, just to be clear. But the jury is not in the courtroom today, but they're going over charges and instructions and so forth in the case. And this group of commenters is almost unanimous in their opinion that Kyle is not being adequately represented. They were very much against putting him on the stand to testify. They were very emphatic about several steps the defense should have taken to have charges dismissed, which may still happen, but at this point it is not. But based off of testimony in the trial and everything, they thought some stuff should have been dismissed. And they were adamant about the defense not fighting hard enough to get certain bits of evidence excluded. Just multiple things that the defense should have done differently. And it's kind of hard not to be discouraged and come away thinking that Kyle Rittenhouse is probably going to be found guilty on something here. And I say that because I want people to be prepared for that potential outcome. The picture being painted in the media has been highly inadequate. The left-wing media is, of course, misrepresenting the case and continuing to lie about the evidence and the events in general. But even the right-wing media is kind of painting this picture that it's a bit more rosy than it really truly is. at least how these lawyers, these defense attorneys are seeing it. Again, we're looking at this from the outside. We're looking at it at, seeing this, and when you're watching this with these lawyers, you're getting their interpretation of it. It may not be as bad as they think it is, because you just never know what the jury is going to key in on and what they're going to focus on. There were reports earlier in the week when Kyle was testifying, and the DA was grilling him, just badgering him, really, that someone in the courtroom was texting out saying that the jury looked like they were just not paying attention and they were bored. So you just never know exactly, how it's really going to turn out. But at any rate, the case in court, if you've not watched it for any length of time, has honestly been a complete shit show. The prosecution has been ripped a new sphincter by the judge on multiple occasions, and in reality, he's crossed the multiple lines, and it kind of calls into question the ethical standards of the two lawyers personally, the two prosecutors, and the office of the DA in general. It's very clear that the prosecutors are out for a conviction at all costs. They are throwing everything out the window in order to get Kyle Rittenhouse convicted of something. Today they were introducing lesser charges to the case in order to give the jury more options to find Kyle guilty of something. Now, most of those were tossed. They were not allowed to be included, but there were enough that were allowed to stay that it's very unlikely that Kyle will walk away from this completely, scot-free. Now, I'm an unbiased observer of this case. Something that we all have to understand, however, is that even if this case goes against Kyle, it's not going to have legal bearing on anyone outside of Wisconsin. And I know the popular opinion in our circle is that it will be setting a precedent for all resistance to riots and looting and all of the things. But that's not really the reality of things. It's not making it any worse for us, because as I have repeatedly told you, that ship has already sailed. We lose the moment we get into a courtroom. Our enemies own that field because they have occupied prosecutors' offices all over the country. If the DA sees things the way you and I see them, you don't even get charged. Okay, you don't make it to that point. Once you are charged and you're going to court, it's a clear indication that you face a significant uphill battle with people who want to see you rot in jail. So that's not something we really should be concerned about or really hanging our response to this on. We already live in that reality. And Kyle Rittenhouse is just the latest iteration of that playing out before us. Now, as I said, I'm an unbiased observer of this because of a couple of things, and primarily because I had already made up my mind about this case when it happened. That the night that this happened, I was watching live streams from all over the country as there were riots and demonstrations taking place in multiple cities that same evening. And the feeds I watched included multiple streamers from Kenosha, and I saw much of the recorded actions that led up to those shootings. I did not see the shootings happen on the stream in real time. However, very quickly after they took place, something like 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most, the live feeds began to get wind that these things had happened, and they began to switch over. I don't know if you guys have watched these sort of multi-streamer live streams where you're looking at a YouTube screen that has 5 or 6 different little picture-in-picture windows from different streamers, and it's usually the same event from different angles, or it might be multiple cities or whatever, multiple events, which was kind of the norm last year during all the riots. But you'll see whoever is running the stream, they'll start kind of looking around and saying, hey, I'm getting, I heard something's happened. Let me see if I can find a stream of it. So that was taking place. They were switching over in the aftermath of these shootings and getting people replaying the videos that they had recorded. So let me take you through this as I saw it happen that night. The first part of that I saw was the stream from someone where he interviews Kyle and a couple of people with him that night, and they're talking about being out protecting properties, and if I recall correctly, this is the one that shows the cops drive by and give them some water, or it may have been that they just mentioned that the cops had given them water, something like that. At any rate, there was commentary, and it was clear that the police were okay with their group being out there in position to guard those properties. And later on, I see a stream that is taking place as the hostilities begin to ramp up. And it's from this gas station, and it shows the initial confrontations between this group of guards, or a group of guards. I don't know for sure that they were the ones that Kyle Rittenhouse was with, but he was actually there at that location at that time. And then there was a large group of protesters. It was very odd because it started out as kind of this cautious interaction, and then it escalated into pushing and yelling, and these two individuals had attempted to light a dumpster on fire, and that fire was put out by someone in the group of guards. Somebody had stepped up with a fire extinguisher and put that fire out, and eventually somebody discharged, I believe it was pepper spray, and at that point the streamer shut down so he could get away from that area and kind of clear his eyes and clear his gear and stuff like that. But at any rate, during the course of that altercation, you can see Rosenbaum, who is eventually the first person shot by Kyle Rittenhouse. You can see that he's suffering from what I call little man syndrome. Okay, he was very agitated, very in your face with the guards, the armed people that were there, and he attempted on multiple occasions to provoke a response from them. Now, none of them really bit into his goading, and he eventually just kind of fades back. But he was visibly agitated and visibly confronting and causing problems. But he wasn't content, as he is one of the individuals who pushed that dumpster out into the street and set it on fire. And he was very angry that someone had extinguished the fire, and he was looking to get into a fight. And when I watched all this kind of unfolding on the stream, I said to myself, that guy's a dick, and he's going to get hurt. Something's going to happen to that guy. He's going to cause a problem, or he's going to hurt somebody. He's looking for a fight. So fast forward to the post shooting. The streams come up showing what is taking place after the shooting, and people begin to find and play their videos from when the shooting actually took place. And what they originally showed was Kyle Rittenhouse as he's running down the street, which eventually we find out he's running away from where Rosenbaum had been shot. And the individuals attack him with the skateboard and try to kick him, and the one guy points the gun at him and all that. That's what we originally were seeing. But eventually there's a streamer who runs into another streamer out on the street, and they begin to talk, about the shooting. And the second streamer, and honestly, guys, it's been over a year, and I can't recall who he is, but he works for a media outlet. I believe it's The Blaze or Elijah Schaefer or something like that. I'm not exactly sure who it was. And he's the gentleman who filmed Rittenhouse shoot Rosenbaum. And then he runs over to Rosenbaum and begins to give him first aid. And this was kind of one of the sort of YouTube stories that came out of the whole thing. And he tells this story to the streamer that I was watching, and he says he had all of this on video, and it should be up on his YouTube channel. So I immediately go to that guy's channel and found the video in question, and I watched it. And I don't believe it's still on YouTube because it was very close up, and it showed Rosenbaum's wounds pretty clearly, as this guy was trying to treat him, and I believe it got taken down. But at any rate, when I watched this, I immediately recognized Rosenbaum from those streams earlier, and I said, holy crap, that's that little short man, and he tried to attack that kid with the rifle. So it didn't surprise me at all that he would do something stupid like that based off of his behavior earlier in the evening. So I came into this trial already decided on how I thought this should turn out, and I'm sure most of you are, kind of in that same camp and look at this the same way that I do. But so when you're watching this and you're looking and seeing this trial, it is absolutely disgusting. As I've said, if you ever get into a courtroom, you are royally screwed. There are multiple routes I could go into here and stretch the show out to several hours, because there's so much that just infuriates me about this whole process, the whole thing, the way it's played out. And I believe anyone who's watched this case, who did so with an objective eye, would be forced to admit that this system is so far gone that it is just beyond repair. Okay, there's so much malpractice that has taken place on this trial. And I'm not basing that off the opinions of the lawyers on the live stream that I'm watching. I'm basing it off just some common sense and what should be justice. Real justice is this trial isn't even taking place, because it's very clear from the videos, from what happened that night, what occurred. But here we are. I don't want to turn this into a really long show, so I'm going to just focus on a couple of things. One being the case that the state is presenting, the theory that they are going with. And the second being the adding of additional charges, lesser charges. Now, the state began the case proposing that Kyle Rittenhouse provoked an attack by showing up at the location armed with a rifle and attempting to put out fires. That the mere presence of Kyle with a rifle and putting out fires angered the mob and provoked them into attacking him. And their position is that Kyle did this intentionally so that he could shoot someone. They've tried to insinuate that he was maybe seeking fame, or that he maybe believed that he was somehow a hero or police officer or fireman or something like that. They've taken all these different little routes with their questioning. But this is not just ridiculous on its face, it's excusing the actions of the mob, okay? It's the riot equivalent of saying that a young woman provoked her rapist because she wore a short skirt and went into a bar, even though she's not legally old enough to drink. It still doesn't excuse the actions of the people that committed the crime. It doesn't excuse the actions of the people who attacked Kyle Rittenhouse. It's ridiculous. It's just infuriating. And this is the case that they're making, at least at the beginning. During the trial, the state was informed, very conveniently, that new video existed. One of these was a video from a drone that was about 200 yards down the street. It's a little bit difficult to tell, but a significant distance from the actual shooting. And this is private footage from a videographer who was there flying that drone that night. And this person just happened to give this to the prosecution last Friday. Okay? Where's it been all this time? Has this person had his head up his ass and not realized that this trial was going to take place and didn't, oh, I happen to have this video and I didn't know I had it and now I do have it and I'll give it to you. I just find that terribly, terribly convenient. It didn't leave the defense very long to prepare for that at all, but at any rate. And the other footage was from an FBI fixed-wing aircraft that had been flying overhead and filmed the whole thing from the air in infrared. Now that in and of itself is strange and probably worth an entire video, just discussing why it is that the FBI is flying around cities filming these events. What does the FBI have to do with that? But that that video was not as important to this new tack that the state has taken, so I won't go too much into that, but I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted you to understand it was not the video that I was referring to when I said new video had come into play. They used the drone video to change their theory. They successfully argued to get an enlarged portion of that video from this drone, which even the judge says that the enlargement looks just like blobs. And they argue now that it shows Kyle Rittenhouse pointing his rifle at someone, and that they, someone that they can only vaguely point out on the video where that person is, and who was not brought to testify, by the way. That person is still alive and still out there, but he wasn't brought to testify because he's the guy that was shooting into the air at the same time Kyle Rittenhouse shot Mr. Rosenbaum. But they didn't bring him to the stand because they didn't want him to have to answer those questions. And now they argue that Kyle is pointing his rifle at that gentleman, and that pointing of the rifle was the actual provocation of Rosenbaum and caused Rosenbaum to attack Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, the lawyer stream that I was watching went absolutely apeshit over this vague and blobby evidence being allowed into trial, and said that the defense didn't object enough and didn't put up enough of a fight with it because it has now become a critical aspect of the state's new theory of the case. I think that this is more than grounds for an appeal, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know all that, but it looks to me as if this would be something that would, if this goes against Kyle, that they would be able to appeal on and say that evidence should have never been allowed, and they did object to it, but they didn't object enough, at least in the eyes of the observers. But the problem with that is that's after the fact, and to me the idea of the defense is that you never get to that point. You never want to be playing for the idea that, well, we'll use that for appeal down the road. And it really, really appears that that's what they did there. It's a serious problem in my mind that the state is allowed to alter its theory of the case mid-trial with that new evidence coming in and add lesser charges mid-trial, which I'll get to in just a second. It's allowing the state to begin presenting facts and present their case and then alter the interpretation of those facts when they begin to believe that their case is not going as they think it should be. Just like with the introduction of lesser charges. They're allowed to alter their story and introduce other charges when they realize that the jury's not going to buy their case, and now they have to seed the ground with as many charges as possible so that they can hopefully get something to stick. To me, it's a very sleazy way around the idea of that you can't be prosecuted twice, double jeopardy. And this is very much like what occurred with the Derek Chauvin trial. The DA in that case just spammed charges that were really mutually excluding, which we covered that. I went over that in another video. But the jury convicts him on all of them. And it seemed the jury was just doing it knowing that that it would eventually be overturned. And I'm afraid that's going to be the same in this case. I'm afraid that the jury is going to see these lesser charges and say, well, I don't think it was a totally clean self-defense, and they're going to convict Rittenhouse on one of these endangerment charges just so they can, maybe try to persuade a mob that they were being fair. Because let's not ignore the political aspects of this that are going on outside of the courtroom. We've seen evidence that someone is trying to dox the jurors. Someone is trying to go after the judge in this case, or at least demonstrate protests, so to speak, at their homes and things like that. So there is a threat. There is something going on outside of the courtroom that could be influencing these jurors, which is disgusting. Again, it's just it's infuriating. It's infuriating. I hope that is not the case. I hope that the jury is smart enough to see past this, terribly presented case. I think normally we have this impression that criminal trials are the prosecuting attorneys presenting a solid, cut and dry case, and it's the defense that is bobbing and weaving and shuffling and doing anything and everything to navigate this minefield that the prosecution has put in place, to get their client out of these charges. Everyone's kind of assuming, even though you're not supposed to, everyone kind of assumes that, well, this person's guilty. It's just a matter of, can we prove it or not? Can we get this trial to show that? And it's the defense that's stretching the bounds and taking all of the risks and going, doing all the sleazy, dirty, underhanded things to get their clients off. We're not seeing that here. We're seeing that behavior, that dirty, underhanded, unethical, and disgusting behavior coming from the prosecution. The defense has presented their case very straightforwardly, and the prosecution has stretched the bounds of what is legal and ethical to present this mishmash, cobbled and taped together case that should have been thrown out on its face, but has been allowed to go forward. Honestly, it's evil. It's just out and out evil. I hope and I believe that people are getting red-pilled on this. I think we've seen some evidence of that on Twitter and people posting things to that extent, that they're starting to see and understand what is going on in courts and what is taking place with these kind of trials. I hope that's the case. This young man is going to more than likely, at a minimum, be on probation with a felony charge for the rest of his life, when in fact he should be walking out of that courthouse with a clean record and his freedom. This is what the system will do to you. Now that's all I got time for this week, folks. Come see us over on Gab. Come see us over on the Mothership. Like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next episode.